When we think of Neanderthals, we picture burly men hunting mammoths and grunting in caves. But what about the women? Who were they? And what role did they play in one of humanity's closest evolutionary branches? The truth will shatter everything you thought you knew. It's time to bury the myth of the savage Neanderthal woman and meet the real ones. Neanderthal women were formidable. On average, they stood about 5 feet tall, but carried 20 to 30% more muscle mass than modern women. Their bones were thicker, their joints more robust, and their shoulders and arms were powerfully developed from the same intense daily labor as the men. They hauled heavy carcasses across frozen ground, processed the meat, and spent hours scraping hides with stone tools. Afterwards, they would soften the tough leather by gripping and chewing it with their teeth, using their mouths like a third hand. This habit was so common and vigorous that their front teeth often showed deep microscopic grooves. Their wide pelvises were perfectly adapted for giving birth in a world without medicine. Their stocky, muscular build gave them incredible endurance and raw strength in the harshest conditions on Earth. She wasn't delicate or fragile. She was built like a survivor. Dense muscle, insulating fat, and powerful limbs. Pregnancy, breastfeeding, or carrying toddlers didn't sideline them. The work had to continue. And here's where the biggest myth completely shatters. Neanderthal women hunted big game right alongside the men. Fossil evidence shows the same brutal hunting injuries on female skeletons as on males. Broken shoulders, head trauma, and fractured arms from close-range spear thrusts into dangerous animals like woolly rhinos, bison, and giant deer. They took part in highly coordinated ambushes. Some acted as beaters, shouting, waving hides, and driving the animal forward. Others served as blockers, cutting off escape routes, and some delivered the killing blows. This wasn't a world of men hunt, women stay home. In the harsh Ice Age, the entire band had to function as one lethal, resilient unit. In the deep Ice Age, survival was not a story of strength alone. It was a story of endurance. And no one embodied that endurance more completely than the Neanderthal woman. Her body was shaped by a world that offered no softness. Temperatures plunged far below freezing. Winds stripped heat from exposed skin in minutes. And every breath carried the sting of winter. In this unforgiving landscape, her anatomy became a masterpiece of adaptation, not sculpted by the ideals of any culture, but by the cold logic of survival. Yet even here, in a world carved by ice and hunger, beauty was not absent. It simply took a different form. The beauty of strength, of resilience, of a body perfectly tuned to its world. A beauty defined not by ornament, but by purpose. She was compact, powerful, and astonishingly resilient. Broad hips anchored dense muscle. Shorter limbs conserved precious heat. A wide, barrel-shaped ribcage protected lungs built to draw in cold, heavy air. Beneath her skin, a thick layer of insulating fat formed a natural armor against the relentless cold. But the true brutality of her world lay in the daily grind of existence. There were no idle days, no rest from labor. She hauled firewood across frozen ground, dragged heavy hides stiff with frost, carried children on her hip while trekking miles through snow. She cracked bones from marrow, scraped skins with stone tools, and lifted carcasses that weighed more than she did. Every task demanded strength. Every task demanded stamina. And every task left its mark. Her bones tell the story, thickened where muscles pulled hardest, joints worn from decades of movement, healed fractures that speak of falls, hunts, and accidents, and of recovery. She did not break easily. Even when she did, she healed and continued. Her hands were a map of her life. Calloused palms, thick fingers, nails chipped from scraping hides and shaping tools. These were hands that built shelters, prepared food, crafted clothing, and tended to the young and the old. Hands that worked from dawn until the last embers of the fire faded. And yet, despite the brutality of her world, she was not diminished by it. She was defined by it. Her strength was not exceptional. It was essential. She was the stabilizing force of her group, the one who kept the fire burning, the one who ensured that life continued even when the cold tried to erase it. In this frozen world, the Neanderthal woman was not fragile. She was not secondary. She was the backbone of her people, a living engine of warmth, labor, and continuity. Her body tells a story written in bone and muscle, a story of a woman built by ice, shaped by struggle, and capable of extraordinary endurance. Neanderthal women were not savages or sidekicks. They were warriors, mothers, innovators, and survivors who endured one of the harshest environments our planet has ever known. For the Neanderthal woman, strength was not only measured in muscle or endurance, it was measured in the moment she brought new life into a world where the environment tested every life from the moment it began. Childbirth for her was not symbolic. It was a high-risk biological event with no medical support and no margin for error. Her pelvis was broad and powerful, built for stability and heavy labor. But Neanderthal infants were born with large skulls, already shaped for the brain growth that defined their species. This created a narrow, demanding birth canal. The mechanics were difficult. The risks were real. Labor could last many hours. Pain was not the defining feature. Danger was. A misalignment, stalled rotation, or simple exhaustion could be fatal. The fossil record shows torn muscle attachments, pelvic stress fractures, and skeletal wear that point to the physical cost of repeated childbirth. Assistance was almost certainly present, not ceremonial, practical. Other women, experienced through their own births, would have helped reposition the mother, supported her weight, and ensured the infant's airway was clear. This was knowledge passed through generations, not through ritual, but through necessity.
When the infant finally emerged, survival depended on immediate action. Skin-to-skin contact wasn't emotional bonding. It was thermal regulation in sub-zero conditions. The newborn's life depended on her body heat, her milk, and her ability to recover quickly enough to resume the physical demands of Ice Age life. There was no extended postpartum period, no protected recovery. She returned to work because the group's survival required it. Neanderthal childbirth was not gentle, symbolic, or romantic. It was the most dangerous work her body ever performed, a biological gamble repeated only a handful of times in her life. And every successful birth was a victory against an environment that tested every life from its first breath. For tens of thousands of years, Neanderthal women lived in one of the harshest environments our species has ever known. They hauled, built, carried, crafted, hunted, gathered, raised children, and survived childbirth in conditions that pushed every biological limit.
Their strength wasn't symbolic. It wasn't metaphorical. It was physical, measurable, and essential. They were central to the survival of their groups, not because they were idealized, but because they were capable. Their bodies, their knowledge, and their labor shaped every generation that followed. And when we look at their bones today, the muscle attachments, the healed injuries, the wear patterns, we don't see fragility. We see evidence. Evidence of endurance. Evidence of skill. Evidence of women whose strength was not an exception, but a requirement. Neanderthal women were not supporting characters in their world. They were structural pillars of it. And here is the truth their story leaves behind. If you want to understand the resilience of our ancient past, you don't start with the weapons. You start with the women. That's the part of prehistory we've underestimated the most.
And the part we can no longer ignore. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and drop a comment below letting me know what you think. See you in the next one.